I am Arpita Bhattacharya, Assistant Professor of English, Swami Vivekananda Institute of Science and Technology. Today my topic is interview. An interview is a psychological and sociological instrument. It is an interaction between two or more persons for a specific purpose, in which the interviewer asks the interviewee specific questions in order to assess his suitability for recruitment, admission, or promotion, or for an opinion. So it is a systematized method of contact with a person to know his views and is regarded as the most important method of data collection. In short, an interview is a two-party conversation in which at least one party has a specific serious purpose. There are not many of us who can remain unaffected by the idea of facing an interview. Nevertheless, you unknowingly pass through interview situations very frequently in your life. I'm giving you an example. When you visit your doctor or lawyer, you are in an interview situation. Similarly, when your boss calls you to discuss certain issues before recommending you for a promotion, you participate in an interview. Several such situations happen all the time, and you deal with them effortlessly, unconsciously. However, while facing a formal interview, say for admission or for a job, you are under much more stress, since so much hinges upon your successful performance. Such interviews need a lot of preparation. So what is the objective? The conduct of an interview depends very much on the reason behind it. So generally, interviews are conducted to achieve some of the objectives. What are they? To select a person for a specific task, to monitor performance, to collect information, to exchange information, and finally to counsel. Then what are the types of interviews? Depending on their objective and nature, interviews can be categorized into job interviews, information, persuasive, exit, evaluation, counseling, conflict resolution, disciplinary, and finally termination. So each type calls for a slightly different approach. When we compare the involvement and contribution of the interviewer and the interviewee, there emerge three basic types of interview: telling and listening, and problem solving. In a telling interview, the flow of communication is almost entirely one way, that is called downwards. It is used most effectively in a directing time-constrained situation, but it can cause hostility and defensive behavior when the employee does not have the opportunity to participate. In a telling and listening interview, more feedback from the subordinate is allowed, but the interviewer still maintains control over the flow of communication. In a problem-solving interview, the flow of communication is two-way. The bulk of communication is upwards, a genuine rapport is established, ideas are pooled, and change facilitated. So my first point is job interview, which I later in my next video I will share. But here I am giving a brief information. Here the candidate wants to learn about the position and the organization. The employer wants to learn about the applicant's abilities and experience. Both hope to make a good impression and to establish a rapport. In the initial round, job interviews are usually formal and structured but later interviews may be relatively spontaneous as the interviewer explored the candidate's responses. My next point, information interviews. Here, the interviewer seeks facts that bear on a decision or contribute to basic understanding. Information flows mainly in one direction. One person asks a list of questions that must be covered and listens to the answers supplied by the other person, like doctor, patient, boss, and subordinate, etc. Next, persuasive interviews. One person tells another about a new idea, product, service, and explains why the other should act on his or her recommendations. Persuasive interviews are often associated with, but are certainly not limited to, selling. The persuader asks about the other person's needs and shows how the product or concept is able to meet those needs. These persuasive interviews require skill in drawing out and listening to others, as well as the ability to impart information. Next, exit interviews. The interviewer tries to understand why the interviewee is leaving the organization or transferring to another department or division. A departing employee can often provide insight into whether the business is being handled efficiently or whether things could be improved. The interviewer tends to ask all the questions while the interviewee provides answers, so encouraging the employee to focus on events and processes rather than on personal gripes will elicit more useful information for the organization. Next, evaluation interviews. A supervisor periodically gives an employee feedback on his or her performance. The supervisor and the employee discuss progress towards predetermined standards or goals and evaluate areas that require improvement. Next one, counseling interviews with an employee about personal problems that are interfering with work performance. The employer is concerned with the welfare of both the employee and the organization. The goal is to establish the facts, convey the company's concern, and steer the person towards a source of help. Next, conflict resolution interviews. Two competing people or groups of people with opposing points of view, such as some Smith versus Jones, day shift versus night shift, blah blah blah, explore their problems and attitudes. The goal is to bring the two parties closer together, cause adjustment in perceptions and attitudes, and create a more productive climate. Next, disciplinary interviews. A supervisor tries to correct the behavior of an employee who has ignored the organization rules and regulations. The interviewer tries to get the employee to see the reason for the rules and to agree to comply. The interviewer also reviews the facts and explores the person's attitude because of the emotional reaction that is likely. Neutral observations are more effective than critical comments. And the final one, that is termination interviews. A supervisor informs an employee of the reasons for the termination of the latter's job. The interviewer tries to avoid involving the company in legal action and tries to maintain as positive a relationship as possible with the interviewee. So to accomplish these goals, the interviewer gives reasons that are specific, accurate, and verifiable. So in your profession, you may come across most of the type of interviewers mentioned by me. So at present, as you may require a more detailed account of job interviews, so in my next video, I will share my concepts and my ideas and my knowledge about job interviews. Thank you very much.